Hello, Sleepy Hollow fans. Welcome to my Season 1, Episode 7 review of Sleepy Hollow. So it's been quite a long time since my last review. I haven't really done one since my new Scooby movies review, and it's been quite a while since my last Sleepy Hollow review, so thank you for being very patient with my Sleepy Hollow reviews, and now we're on to Episode 7. So last time I finished my LEGO Marvel Avengers DLC Let's Play with the release of Part 6, which was my final part. And I'll be continuing with that, with the bonus levels. But that's what I did last time, so if you want to go check that out, that's still up on my channel. But of course today, we'll be covering Season 1, Episode 7 of Sleepy Hollow, titled The Midnight Ride, which was released on November 11th, 2013. The short synopsis of the episode is, Abby and Ichabod must find hidden clues to thwart the evil in Sleepy Hollow, and Abby gets an unexpected visit from the late Andy Brooks. So for the first 6 episodes, I kind of would watch the episodes online, and, now I have a bit of a change up this time, as for this episode and for every other future episode, I will be reviewing them on the Sleepy Hollow Complete Series box set. That's right, the entire show, the entire series, season 1 to 4 is all in this nice little package, and I'm really excited. This was it's not too bad, not too expensive to get, and this is the season 1 DVD in the box set. So there's a nice look of that there. And so, yeah, that's what we'll be going in from now on. And when I finish Season 1 of Sleepy Hollow, I'll be reviewing the special features of the DVD for, either in its own video or in my review of the last episode. But, yeah, that's what I'll be watching from now on on the Complete Series box set. And I'm very happy to own it. And, it's great to have physical media like that. So I totally recommend this box set. It's very nice quality, and it's got all 4 seasons. So if you want the entire show in the palm of your hands, this is really it. This is a Sleepy Hollows fan's dream come true. So I'm not really sure how fans really feel about this episode. I never really have. There's not many reviews of Sleepy Hollow out there, so I don't know the current fan consensus. All I know really loosely is fans' consensus on the seasons, but not particularly fans' consensus on individual episodes. So I'm not sure how fans feel about this particular episode of Sleepy Hollow. So why don't we take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of Sleepy Hollow.
The episode begins in Boston, 1775, with the famous Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. As 4 men join to ride on their horses, a Hessian cuts down 3 of the men with his axe as they race to escape him. Back in present-day Sleepy Hollow, Abby brings some supplies to Crane's cabin. He's observing them, and he is amazed by the inclusion of bottled water, pointing out, the lake or tap water. And she explains about the toxins in the water, and he's appalled by the idea of how this generation has, defiled the water supply of Earth, like in the lakes and in tap water. It's a pretty nice theme throughout the episode, where Crane has this humorous thing of, appalled at how you have to pay for water instead of just having free access to it. And it is ridiculous, and he does have a point. But there's a lot of good humorous scenes with, with his, little thing about water. But this is my favorite scene of, all the water scenes.
Pine Springs. Is that a variation of water?
A brand. Cheapest one.
You paid for water? Why not drink from one of the thousands of taps around town? Or the lake?
Well, tap water's got chemicals in it. The lake, you don't even want to know.
The extent to which your generation has defiled this earth is truly mind-boggling.
When an alarm on Abby's phone indicates that it's sundown, she tells him to go meet with the Freemasons, since they have a no girls allowed rule, which is pretty ridiculous, especially since Abby's done a lot with Crane, But, I guess rules are rules. These guys are old-fashioned. But, there's a cool little thing later that I'll touch on of Crane fixing that. So she sees Luke, who asks her what she's prepping for. And it turns out Jenny's getting out and moving in with her tomorrow. And he tries to, talk to Abby. And she says tomorrow afternoon they'll talk, they'll catch up, and have some coffee, I think, together. Or some tea or something like that. So he leaves, and later on someone calls out to him from an alleyway when he gets out of a convenience store. When he approaches, he realizes it's Brooks, the guy who died in, I believe, episode 1. So he's back, who they all thought was dead. And Brooks proceeds to threaten him to stay away from Abby, basically saying, don't stay away from her, you have no idea what's coming, leave her alone. So Abby returns to her car to find that Crane has left her a voicemail. And that's awesome. Crane's finally catching up with technology, and he's finally doing a voicemail. Of course, he's not confident. He's still baffled by it, and you could tell by the way he leaves a voicemail that he's still new to it. And the voicemail says that he's like, you're right, you do deserve to be at the meeting, so I'll change the no girls allowed rule for you, and tell the Freemasons to stuff it. You're my partner in crime. You're my partner. You're the other witness. You're just as vital as me. So I'll go change the rule. And that's really awesome of him. That's the kind of awesome character that Crane is. And he says she should meet him at the lodge to plan for the Horseman's arrival. So when Crane gets there, he can't locate any of the Freemasons. So he arms himself with a sword and moves throughout the house. Very suspicious of what's going on. And just as Abby arrives to see the Horseman through the window and Crane at the other window, he finds all of his fellow Freemasons headless when Abby comes to join him. And they both watch the Horseman ride off. What an opening. So Captain Irving arrives on the scene and warns them both that they better not be a headless perp in their recounting of the events. He doesn't want to hear about the Horseman. But, of course, it is the Horseman. And it's been, since episode 1? I mean, he's been teased throughout in little, episodes, and he was teased a little bit in the last episode, but this is the first proper episode where the Horseman's finally back as the main antagonist of the story. So it's really cool. And he pretty much explains that his working theory is a cult ritual suicide, which Crane finds absolutely absurd. But, they got to come up with, a cover story, so... And I think he doesn't really even believe the Horseman because he hasn't really seen it yet, so... And to be quite honest, you can't blame him. I mean, he's seen headless bodies, but he hasn't actually seen this Headless Horseman, so his skepticism is warranted. But obviously, Crane's not too happy about his friends, deaths being portrayed like that. But, you gotta cover... That's how... But we can't, have panic arise, so that's how it's gotta be. So while going over the scene on, his own, Crane, obviously is very frustrated, about everything that's happened. He says, many men have died, this is nothing new for me. But obviously you could tell that this does hurt him because, especially since the last episode, he got to know these men. And it's too bad they didn't have more episodes to develop. It could have really been cool to see Crane and these group of men, converse more than just the last episode. But hey, it is what it is. He still at least does a good job of mourning them and, and actually making their loss feel, meaningful. So Crane finds a ring on one man's finger, hand, and he finds the information he has been seeking about the Horseman that has been ripped out of the book. But, the Horseman, ripped the page out of the book. So they realize that the Horseman was after his skull, apparently assuming it was in the possession of the Freemasons. And if the horseman gets to his skull before they do, the other 3 horsemen will rise. So this is very much high stakes. Can't let the horseman get his skull, or we're going to have an apocalypse on our hands. So they ask Irving for the skull to be destroyed, and he's pretty much in disbelief about this, explaining that he had the skull sent out to an independent lab. However, he's no longer disbelieving of them, as when he goes to the lab to himself to check on the skull, the evidence technician, Paul, yes, that's my older little counterpart, tells him that the skull is a mystery, and that it came back unreadable. The skull was unreadable. There were no DNA markers, no cell structure, no signs of life. So Irving asked for a box, and neither of them noticed the eyes pop open, which was very surprising. And now that the horseman knows where his skull is, because he has like a little link to it, obviously, the Headless Horseman enters, guns fucking blazing, and kills Paul. And so Paul, the evidence technician, my spiritual self, has died in the episode. And I gotta say, seeing the fucking Headless Horseman with an axe in one hand and a fucking machine gun in the other, awesome shit. Really love it. This is what I love to see. This is what I came for. Love seeing the Horsemen just use this modern day like guns instead of the old school ones, and fucking spraying the place up, going all guns blazing. And when Irving fires back, he narrowly avoids being beheaded by the axe, which gets thrown at him. Thank God he ducked in time, or otherwise his head would be gone too. And by shooting a pipe to allow steam out, Irving can grab, the head, the skull, and he escapes. So he brings the head back to Crane and Abby and tells them what he saw, saying, "Shit, you guys are right. There is a Headless Horseman." And he's a disbelief. He doesn't know how to handle it. And, he doesn't know, this is his first time, experiencing this. All the cameras cut out around the time of the attack, so there's no evidence of, what transpired between him, Paul, and the Headless Horseman. But now Irving can't deny the truth of the Horseman's existence, because he saw it for himself. He wanted to see it. Abby even said, you wanted evidence, you wanted proof, you wanted to know that the Headless Horseman exists. Well, there you go. I don't think he actually thought he was going to get evidence, or actually thought he was going to encounter a Headless Horseman. So now this basically leaves Abby and Crane to destroy the skull. They try everything humanly possible. They try smashing the skull with a fucking sledgehammer, I believe. Doesn't work. Try to burn it in acid. Doesn't work. Break it with a sledgehammer. That doesn't work. They try to blow it up. That doesn't work either. Nothing works. None of their options work. So their next option is to take it to an industrial compactor to be smashed. That's their last choice. They either say either this is going to be it, or, who fucking knows what we're going to do. That's all we have. However, on the way there, Crane notices 4 lanterns hanging in the clock tower. When Crane gets closer, it turns out the lanterns are the 4 heads of the dead Freemasons. Crane is obviously furious at this offense that his dead friends, his dead Freemasons, his brothers, are all fucking hanging. Their heads are all hanging like lanterns on a clock tower. He says he remembers a time when Adams gave Paul Revere a document with a demonic heptagram on the manuscript, and they were secrets for conquering evil, and Crane realizes that's what the Masons wanted to tell him, the Headless Horseman's weakness. Awesome, we got a weakness for the Headless Horseman. Can't wait to find out what it is. That makes things a lot more interesting. So Crane and Abby visit the Tarrytown Museum of Colonial History, where the manuscript is kept, but not without Crane, very annoyed and obviously upset over what this tour guide is teaching children about Paul Revere. He not only is he upset about water being charged, asking the guard, "Did you buy that water?" And he's like, "I can't believe you did that." But this is such a great scene. Seeing Crane so upset at how Paul Revere is being talked about. It's one of the best scenes. And he teaches the children what Paul Revere was actually like. And it's just a phenomenal scene, seeing Crane just be mad at this tour guide who's getting every history wrong, and he's like correcting him, and and he's upset at how he's being portrayed. It's probably the best scene of the episode, and humor is definitely the highlight of this episode, as Crane has it in spades of this episode. No shortage of humor in this episode, not just with Crane individually, but Crane and Abby together have fantastic humor, which I'll talk about later in the outro. But yeah, great scene, best one in the episode.
While Revere was, well, revered for his many talents, he's most famous for what historical event?
The Midnight Ride!
That's right. In fact, many refer to it as Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, since he was the first patriot to yell, "The British are coming!" as he rode into Concord.
Pardon the interruption, but Paul Revere never arrived in Concord. That was Samuel Prescott's route. And the warning all the riders gave, as discreetly as possible, was, "The regulars are coming, not the British are coming." See, we too were British at the time, so that would have been most unhelpful.
Did you just say we?
Excuse us. My cousin Steve forgot to take his medication this morning. Didn't you, Steve?
I'm the only one amongst you who doesn't require medication. A highly acclaimed dentist. The man was a silversmith. It's the last person you want poking around in your mouth.
So Abby pulls Crane aside and says, "Okay, I got some good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first?" And he's like, "What is this, like a riddle?" Like he's like, "Just get to it. Like I don't know what this is." And she's like, "You know what? Never mind." And then she tells him the bad news, which is that the manuscript is in London, but the good news is it's also online. Of course, even if he doesn't understand what that means, she assures him, "Yeah, it's a good thing that it's online." She's like, "You have no idea what I'm talking about." He's like, "No, I don't." Which just shows that Crane has... I mean, we're 7 episodes in, so I wouldn't expect Crane to be this tech savvy yet. Or at least, I don't think he's ever going to be tech savvy, but just Crane interacting with new 21st century technology is just fantastic in and of itself. So they figure out that the manuscript is coded with a Vignere cipher, but without the code word, it's impossible to decipher it. Abby completely forgets about her coffee date with Luke and calls, him to cancel and tell him that she can't make it. He is still haunted by what Brooks said, and he chooses not to answer her call. Brooks appears in where Abby was going to make the call, in like the sewers, I want to say, or somewhere around there, and is promptly elbowed in the face by Abby, who tells him he's supposed to be dead. So he's stuck as like the Headless Horseman's, I guess, like messenger, and he wants it to end, but the Horseman won't let him do that. So Brooks is basically feeding Abby this information, trying to protect her, but also trying to get free from the Horseman. So grasp. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Crane discovers the code word they were searching for, Cicero, which is written on the back of the Horseman's teeth by Paul Revere. Pretty clever. They never actually say how Paul Revere wrote those words on the Horseman's back. I don't know if he had, enchanted it. I don't know if it was after he died, but, it's on the back of his teeth, and all of a sudden. And so Crane goes to look for Abby and finds her with Brooks, and they have a bit of a tense standoff, but Brooks insists he's only there to help. And so, they just let him go because they got bigger things to worry about, and honestly, like, if he was really that much of an immediate threat, I think they would know. So Crane tells him to tell the Horseman to meet in the cemetery when night falls before he leaves. So the witnesses go through the manuscript and learn that death cannot be slain, but it can be captured and enslaved with the help of a witch who turns the moon to the sun. Crane gets a little concerned about their inability to summon, Katrina for help. They don't have access to a witch, and Abby realizes they don't need a witch at all. If they use UV light to simulate the sun, that could possibly work, which is honestly pretty cool. And great thinking on Abby's part, so they don't have to be freaked out that they won't have help by a witch. But they need Captain Irving's help to follow through with their plan, and hopes to keep the Horseman in a cell designed by Thomas Jefferson, which is situated beneath the archives. So that's cool that Captain Irving's going to join in, and help them with their plan. Now that he's seen the Horseman himself, he had a bigger role now in this episode, which is really cool. So before they put their plan into action, Abby and Crane discuss their unique position as witnesses, and how Abby says that she can't really share the things she liked to with Luke, even if she wanted to. And they have a little discussion about that, but they realize it is what it is, but they have each other, and that's all that matters. When the sun goes down, Crane informs the Horseman of his reply, holding up the skull with a candle in it. Nice little mockery there of saying, you made my friends like lanterns, I'm gonna fucking light up your skull like a lantern. So Crane's basically the bait of this trap, which is really cool. Crane then rides on his horse back through the cemetery and towards the trap. The Horseman follows him through the tunnels and finds a fake head, causing him to smash every fake head he comes across. The real head is the one that Abby's carrying, and she snuffs out the light and runs. She falls and begins to yell for Crane, crawling away from the Horseman as best she can. And the episode ends with her getting to a particular spot in the room where she signals Irving to turn on the UV lights, effectively trapping the Horseman. So yeah, it just ends abruptly. They trap the Horseman. The end. What's going to happen next? You're going to have to find out in the next episode. What a way to end the episode, I must say. I'm going to give Season 1, Episode 7 of Sleepy Hollow 3 stars out of 5. So since this is a high 3 out of 5 episode, I'll start off with the negatives of this episode. My biggest negative with this episode is really Abby by herself. Not necessarily with her dynamic with Crane, but just her individual storyline, her own, what she's dealing with in this episode. I gotta be honest, I felt like she had nothing really going for her in this episode. She didn't have much to do. And she didn't really have any. She had no compelling storyline or problem in the episode. It just felt like there wasn't really anything there with Abby. It just, even when she talked about how she couldn't be forward with Luke, it's just, stuff we've tackled before. How they have to be, they can't, they have to keep things to themselves. That they're always there for each other. It's just stuff that's been reiterated, and there's just not much going with Abby, despite, even though we got two guys trying to, trying to go after her and, trying to, protect her, and trying to get to, know her better, but I just felt like it didn't really work with her. I just felt like her storyline in this episode, there wasn't really any storyline for her, or anything compelling about her on her own in this episode. I also think that she was pretty useless when it came to the investigation side of this episode. What the Freemasons were going to tell Crane. What's the Headless Horseman after. I felt like she didn't really contribute much. I mean, sure, she found out that the manuscript was online, and she said that we can use UV light rather than get a witch. But besides those minute things, Crane did a lot of the heavy lifting, and I feel like she didn't really play a big role in the investigation side, and I think that's a shame, because Abby Abby's a police officer. You would think she would be good at at looking for clues, investigating, trying to piece together and figure out what the villain's motive is for this week. And I just didn't see that from her, and she just didn't really do much for me in this episode. So yeah, the biggest thing for me is just, Abby as, her by herself and as a character in this episode is really she's really a big detriment to this episode. She doesn't do much. She just doesn't have much going for her, and she doesn't really help. She doesn't do many vital things for the plot in this episode, other than help, trap the Horsemen. So hopefully, maybe in the next episode they'll improve that. But yeah, not really good on Abby's side of things. Besides that, the only other minor negative, the only other big negative I have, and this is my final one, is the loose threads with Luke and Brooks. So you got these two guys who are after Abby for different reasons. Luke wants to reconnect with Abby. He wants to try and rekindle something, be her friend, earn her trust back after they broke up. But and then he gets threatened by Andy to stay away, and he doesn't answer. So now the loose thread is, oh, what's Luke gonna do? Is where's his direction gonna go? But for me, I didn't find Luke a compelling, I've never found him a compelling character in this episode. I'm not really interested in his storyline and where he's going to go, because I don't think him and Abby have that kind of chemistry that I'm like, oh, I really want to see him, get back on Abby's good side. I'm just not invested with his character yet, and maybe that'll change over time, but for me, I felt like his storyline didn't do much for me. And then there's Brooks, who we're not really sure why he's trying to protect Abby or trying to help her. It's implied in the episode that he's doing it because he wants to be free of the Horsemen, but, does he have other underlying motives? Is there other things going on with him? But neither of these storylines are really compelling enough for me to care, and I'm just not invested in these storylines. I don't care where they go, and I just find them very useless characters that that didn't really need, that weren't really major in this episode, other than Brooks relaying the message to the Horsemen to set up the trap. But other than that, I don't find any of these men compelling, both as characters and storyline wise. I just don't care where they go. But that's really all I have for negatives. That's just a big one. Abby and the two men that are after her and their storylines. That's really my main issue with it. So now let's go on to the positives for this episode. The first minor positive is I think the action of this episode, when it was there, was pretty good. I really loved all the kills and the action. I think my favorite part of the episode, action-wise, is when the Horseman found out where his skull was. He came to the lab where they were studying his skull, and came with a fucking axe and a machine gun and fucking sprayed up the place. It was so awesome and badass. It just reminded me how cool the Headless Horseman is and why he's the best villain of the series. And it's just, great to see him again. He always delivers on the action, so there's really no complaints here. Episode 1 probably did it a lot better wise with, the Headless Horseman action. It wasn't too heavy on action this time, but when it was there, it was good. I very much did enjoy the action scenes that were there. I also think the humor in this episode was really on point. If you really like the humor in Sleepy Hollow, you're going to like this episode. This episode has a lot of good humor, particularly from Crane. Crane delivers a lot of great humor in a lot of different areas. He really, shines in the humor department. But also Crane and Abby have, some great humor together, have back and forth. And I'll get into their dynamic later, when I get to that point. But yeah, the humor was great. It was really on point in this episode, and it was definitely the best aspect of it. Another aspect I liked is Captain Irving's role in the story. So Captain Irving's been a character that's been very minor, not been a big, player story-wise in these first 6 episodes. So it was nice to see him play a bigger role and get more to do and finally be proven wrong and be proven, yeah, there's some shit that is unexplainable in the show. And Irving's finally seen one of those. He doesn't believe the Headless Horseman exists. And to be fair, you can't blame him because he hasn't seen it yet. But now that he's finally witnessed that for himself, now he can't deny it. And now hopefully this will mean that he'll play a bigger role. Obviously, with the way things ended in this episode, I'm expecting him to have just as big of a role in the next episode. But yeah, it was nice to see him have a bit more to do in this episode, and he was in the best action scene with the Horseman. So really no complaints there. I'm glad they got him more to do, and that he got to face off against the Headless Horseman, and he got to help Crane and Abby set up a trap for the Horseman, and just those little things really helped. It's always good to give certain minor characters that we see sprinkled out get a little more attention in certain episodes. It helps, shake up the formula of the episode, and it's nice to see. Then we have the villain of the episode, which is not a new villain this time. It is a repeat villain. They have brought back the Headless Horseman from episode 1. And to be fair, I'm fine with that. I mean, the Headless Horseman was the best villain in this first season period. Nobody in this season has lived up to the Headless Horseman. There's been a couple of good villains, here and there, maybe one or two, but most of the villains have been duds. So honestly, I'm pretty happy to see the Headless Horseman back, and he delivered just as well. Not as amazing as he was in the first episode, but definitely got a lot to do in this one, and it was nice to see him again. And I am excited to see whether, it seems like most likely he will be the main villain of the next episode, unless if they try to add a secondary villain, to help break out the Horseman, or, they'll have to deal with some other threat. Who knows? But whether it's the Headless Horseman, whether we'll get the Headless Horseman again in the next episode or not, really doesn't matter to me, because anytime he's the villain, it's great, and he's the best villain of the first season, so why not bring him back? No, there's no harm in it, and there's nothing wrong with having repeat villains if they work. I mean, they could bring back dud villains if they wanted to and try to, make a good story out of it. But the Headless Horseman is a vital piece of, the main arc that they're going for, so it makes sense to, bring him back, and he did a good job in this episode, as per usual. No complaints on the Headless Horseman. Just as good as he was in the first episode. I also like that the Headless Horseman, he had a good goal and was very deadly in this episode. He did everything he could to get to that goal. I think in the first episode, I'm not sure, but I believe the first episode he did not have a goal. I believe he just woke up and was tearing through the city, possibly trying to find his skull, but he might... but I don't believe he was. I don't think they ever explicitly said that in episode 1. I mean, it's been a while since I did my episode 1 review, so I'll have to go back and look, but I don't believe so. So it was nice to have him have, a straightforward goal. He's trying to get at this object, and he'll do anything to get it. And it was nice that he also had a weakness, because it doesn't make him all powerful. Yes, he cannot be killed, but the fact that he can be tamed and captured and, is a good enough weakness. And it helps make the character better, because it doesn't portray him as, perfect. He does have, a weakness, a flaw. Whether even if it's not death, it is still very much weakness, and they still can trap him. Next, I really like the chemistry between Abby and Crane, as mentioned previously. Abby and Crane's chemistry was awesome in this episode. Very funny. Their dynamic was great. They really played off each other, and not just in the humor department. They did a good job. Building each other up, helping each other with the traps, and motivating each other when they needed it too. So they not only were they good on the humorous side, but they also helped motivate each other a little bit, and and said, at least we got each other, and it made their bond stronger in this episode. So I liked their dynamic. It was good. There was a lot of good laughs in this episode. No complaints with me on that one. But my final and biggest positive of this episode, the one character I haven't really touched upon, the main guy himself, Mr. Ichabod Crane. Oh boy, was Crane awesome in this episode. Crane did so much in this episode and was easily the best aspect of this episode. I mean, he is my favorite character, so it's so nice to see him still be portrayed well. He was both funny individually and with Abby, as mentioned previously. So he was, like I mentioned, he was great on the humorous side. He did, he worked off of Abby well. But he did really well with the investigation side of things. He pieced together the clues really well. He was able to decipher the code. And we got to relive his memory of Paul Revere and the document that he was handed by, Thomas Jefferson, of the Headless Horseman's weakness. And we also got to see him grieve a little, grieve over his lost brothers and even, the Freemasons. And even though, like I said, he shrugs off and says, I've dealt with death before, this is nothing new for me. You can clearly see it does bother him because he doesn't like seeing people die, especially people that he's grown to enjoy. And even though they were only together for one episode, Crane did a good job, selling it, that we making us, the audience, care about their deaths and making us sympathize with Crane and, get him motivated to figure out why his brothers were killed in that way. And he did find out, and he couldn't kill the Horseman, but he was able to trap him. So in a way, he got what he wanted, and he really did great. He did everything well. He was funny. He was very smart in this episode, piecing together the clues. And we got to see more of his, grieving side, and got to see him, more determined and motivated to avenge his lost brothers. Even despite his age does not, deter someone from still not enjoying loss. Yes, he's experienced many losses in his life, obviously with his age, but still, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt any less when it does happen. And he said, I do not want to live on, I do not want to leave this earth knowing that the Headless Horseman is still alive. I want him, if I am to die, I want him to die, go along with me. And that's the best part. I love when he said that, when he said he killed the Horseman because he knew that if he was going to die, he's going to fucking kill the Horseman and bring him along with him. You're going to kill me, you're going with me. So overall, guys, would I recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show? Yeah, I would. It's a high 3 out of 5. I think it does a good job progressing the story a bit further, and it is a fun and entertaining watch, but it is held back by one of the main leads, Abby, not being as strong as she could, and two of the storylines, the two guys that, are with her, not really, their storylines not being interesting, and them as characters not really being interesting either. I think if Abby's one had been cleaned up, that would have only been the minor negative with the episode, was the Luke and Brooks minor storylines. But, Abby being a detriment to this episode really wasn't great, and hopefully they will improve on that in the next episode. But still, it's a nice, funny, compelling episode. Abby does well with Crane. She just doesn't do well by herself in this episode, and hopefully they will fix that in the next episode. But yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on this episode. Do you like this episode? Do you love it? Do you hate this episode? If you do, please, tell me why. Or are you like me, where you're just somewhere in the middle, where you think it's alright? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Sleepy Hollow content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, I will have more Sleepy Hollow reviews this month, maybe 1 or 2 more, hopefully. I will be working on some other big projects for the future, and also, the gaming videos as well. And, every month I like to shift the shows. But if you guys want more Sleepy Hollow past December, please let that be known, and I will continue doing more of that. We're close to ending the first season, And it's been a fun ride, kind of revisiting the show after it's, got canceled back in like 2017. It's really cool to go back and kind of see the full show again, years later. It really is fascinating and interesting. So if you're willing to join me on that journey and see me review more episodes, then please subscribe and ask for more, and I shall deliver. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talk about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. So in my next video, after I get some of bits and pieces of my future projects done, in my next actual video, I will be continuing my Lego Marvel Avengers playthrough with the first bonus level of the 3. There are 3 bonus levels that I found that are still there on Lego Marvel Avengers. So I'm going to play those through, and then we will be done with that game, and we can move on to whichever the next game is. But yeah, if you're interested in seeing me play the first bonus level, which is a level based on Iron Man 3, so if you like that film and you want to see me play the level based on that, then join me in my next video, and we can and we'll be able to do that. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and joining me on this review, and look forward to many more to come. And as always, peace out.